There are more than 18 million Asian Americans currently living in the United States. The largest group is of Chinese descent. From the entertainment industry to food and fashion, Asian Americans are leaving their imprint on the cultural fabric of the United States. This week on Full Frame, we'll meet prominent Asian Americans who are defining success in their respective fields. I'm Mike Walter in Los Angeles. Let's take it full frame. Margaret Cho is a comedian, author, musician, actor, clothing designer, an activist, and a trailblazer. She's been called the patron saint of outsiders. She's an outspoken advocate for the LGBT community and victims of bullying. She also serves the homeless in her hometown of San Francisco. Credited with bringing the first Korean-American family to television, Margaret has simultaneously fought for recognition of the culture and heritage she loves while fighting against its traditional and conservative values. Much of her art is controversial and provocative, and in her world, no topic is taboo. Her family inspires much of her comedy material, and Margaret spares no barbs.
We never had a babysitter or anything. I never remember ever having a babysitter, and my mom would work all day, all night, come home really late at night, and I wouldn't be in bed, and she would freak out like, "Go to bed! Go to bed! If you don't go to bed, I'm gonna call the police." I'm like, good. Call the police. Maybe they can read me a story. Along with my rights.
She joins us now to talk about growing up Cho, what fuels her activism, and her recent psycho-comedy tour. Margaret Cho, welcome to Full Frame.
Thank you.
What does Mom think when you do that bit? Does she love it now?
I think she loves it. I mean, I think that for the most part, at least in my family, for the women, as they get older, they become more and more invisible. And so I think they treasure these moments of visibility whenever they can get them. And certainly in my work, it's a good way to shine a spotlight on her, and she really gets into it.
I have a friend of mine who she's done very, very well, successful career-wise, but she says growing up with Asian parents that the parents still say, "When are you going to become an engineer or a doctor?" Did you have to deal with any of that?
I think that my family were so confused by my life choices. I mean, they not really understood what stand-up comedy was. There's no equivalent in Korea. They don't have the same art form. You know, there are comedians in Korea for sure, but there's not that kind of place where people go see you do a show where you talk about your life. It's actually a very odd thing for Korean people. So I don't think they understood it.
But they've been supportive, though.
Now, yes, certainly. I mean, I think because I feel that their concerns about me going into entertainment were sort of colored by their idea of what America was. When they came here in the 60s, it was a very different world. It was very difficult for Asian Americans of their generation to deal with the racism and deal with invisibility and deal with all this stuff, so they didn't know it was possible for me to have a career in what they considered American entertainment.
You know what's interesting? I was watching some clips about you on YouTube. You can watch anything there now. But one of them was pioneers of television. And I look at you and I think of you as so young. You know, I think of pioneers of television as like Ed Sullivan or Lucille Ball. But you really are a pioneer of television. I mean, what is that? First of all, that moniker, what does that feel like? And then talk to me about the experience being on the show back in the 80s.
Well, I mean, it feels right. You know, it feels certainly like I am a pioneer, but then at the same time, you know, because it's in my lifetime, it doesn't seem so different, you know. And but in 1994, we had never had an Asian American family in television, and so you know, we had 4 networks then. It was a different world. Now there's a lot more networks. There's a lot more diversity in television in general. So I see that shift as being something that I helped make happen, and that's really good.
And the show is All American Girl. Talk to us about that experience, because in many ways you would think, oh, this is fantastic, and yet what I've heard is that the show was watered down and it kind of lost what could have made it really special in some respects.
Well, only because the fact that they were so concerned of our about our ethnicity, and that at that point being such an outrageous thing to have people who are not white on TV. I mean, at that point, it was a big deal. We had just basically had this idea that the world was changing, that it could include a dialogue about race that went beyond black and white. And so that really was a big deal then.
Now there's Fresh Off the Boat, which I guess builds off of that, and I think has even paid homage to the show. What are your thoughts on it?
It's great.
Yeah.
I mean, I am friends with Eddie Huang, who is the inspiration behind that show, and when he was going into the creating process, he reached out to me and tried to ask me about all these different aspects of what he was doing, and so we worked together in the very beginning to try to figure out what the best way to approach things were, and I thought he's done a wonderful job. I know that the show is definitely, it's taken a long time to get there, but it picks up where I left off, which is 21 years to get there. It's really quite too long, I think.
That's remarkable, isn't it? I mean, 21, that's more than 2 decades. It's insane. I read somewhere that you had one experience where you didn't feel as though you were accepted by Koreans. Obviously, you have universal acceptance. You're up on stage. People love you. Do you still feel that way, and what's the difference?
Oh, I don't feel that way. I mean, I don't feel that, I think when I first started in the early 90s, especially when I was coming into television and entertainment in general, that the Korean community was very alarmed by my presence because I was very racy, I was very Americanized. I mean, I am American, so it's like, that was just difficult. But now I'm a lot older, I've been around for a long time, and so a lot of the people that had found me offensive are dead. So that's my reward, staying alive.
Outlive them all, right?
Yeah.
So some of the things that people may not be familiar with, maybe they are familiar, you know, nominated for a Grammy as a performer, musician. Some people might say, wow, that's...
pretty good.
Yeah. So what about the, you know, I gave the introduction, the diversity of all these different things that you do. How do you define yourself?
Well, I'm always a stand-up comedian. I mean, that's just the general job description that, you know, then my being of what I will always be. And then everything else is just a fun way of expressing that.
Patron Saint of Outsiders. What do you think of that title?
It's great.
Yeah, well,
I think it's great.
I mean, it's another. You say you always see yourself as a comedian, but it's fantastic. People see you that way.
Yeah.
I mean, talk to me about that. When you first heard someone say that, you're like, oh, wow.
Well, I think it makes sense in that I think traditionally comedy clubs are rather unsafe places for people of color, for people who are different, who are different. Like sexual minorities, definitely like minorities in general, women, we all sort of have trouble in comedy clubs because it's an art form that's can be very brutal and very difficult. And even though it's an art form about outsiders too, so it's all very complicated. So I think creating a comedy club experience that's safe for people like myself is really important.
LGBTs, and not just that, but also victims of bullying. You know, these are two really important issues to you. Can you talk to me about, you know, everybody has to focus on their career. They got to do this, they got to do that. But at some point, you want to give back. You want to be that person. What got you into it? How did you kind of get started doing that? And the reward in doing that kind of work. What's it like for you?
Well, I started out in the LGBT community doing fundraisers when I was a really young teenager, and at that point we were really dealing with AIDS and looking to find money and community support for people with AIDS and HIV, and then ultimately that grew into the fight for marriage equality, which became a very, very big deal. And then, so I've grown up within the LGBT community as an activist the entire time. It was part of my work in general, and then became a big part of my life.
What about bullying? What was your experience with it? What's the overall message that you'd like to make about that?
Well, I think it's very important to show a good example of being queer and having a successful life, and then to be able to show kids who may be struggling in that way that you can actually live a wonderful life and still be all of these different things that have been difficult to be. So it's good.
And homelessness, you're also involved in that in San Francisco. It's a serious problem there, as it is
It's everywhere.
everywhere, exactly.
Yeah, but that's my homeless outreach had a lot to do with a way for San Francisco comedians to deal with their grief and the loss of Robin Williams. So because he was such an activist for homeless people and spoke in front of Congress countless times, not only with his just the money that he gave to homeless people, but just the effort that he made in his work. So, and I think his death was really something that we couldn't process as comedians in that city. He was like our father figure. So this was a good project to help us deal with it, you know.
How jarring was it when you heard the news?
Well, I still kind of don't really comprehend it correctly. Like, I know that he's gone, and I know that the circumstances were really terrible, but it's still very hard to reconcile that with the man that I knew, you know. So I think it's hard for all of us. It's very hard.
Comedians, though, are complicated, and I think his death kind of illustrates that, because I think we always think that, because we always see you're making us laugh, you're funny, he's same thing. We don't think that at some point you guys might be depressed, or you might be sad, or that, you know, like, right now you're serious. I imagine a lot of settings people think, come on, you got to be funny. I mean, can you talk to me about that? Yeah, pulling back the curtain and being a comedian and the difficulties that entails.
I don't know, you know, but I think there's two minds of it, like that comedians can be very complicated and it can be a very difficult life. But then the other mindset is what Joan Rivers was all about, was about gratitude, saying it's so easy to be a comedian and we're so grateful that we have this position and we can work forever. And she was very, very right about a lot of those things.
What is next for you?
I will be on a tour. I'll go to Europe and do shows. I'm just going to be everywhere.
Busy, busy, busy.
Yeah.
Margaret, thanks so much. Really appreciate it.
Thank you.
Coming up, we'll take a look at how one hit American television series is finally telling a very important Asian American story. Chinese-American actors Byron Mann and Tai Ma were both born in Hong Kong and are now Hollywood actors co-starring in AMC's hit American television series Hell on Wheels, a contemporary Western. Byron Mann plays the role of Chang, a powerful businessman and the villain of the series. Mann has starred in such films as Red Corner and The Corruptor and the Asian-American indie film Jasmine. He's recently been cast in The Big Short to play opposite a couple people you may have heard of: Brad Pitt, Christian Bale, Steve Carell, Ryan Gosling. Now, Tai Ma is a veteran actor and has played in a wide variety of roles in everything from movies such as Rush Hour and $1 Million Arm to television hits like 24. Live Another Day. He's joining us to talk about his Hell on Wheels character, Tao, a highly educated Chinese man whose good English makes him invaluable to the railroad company. Hell on Wheels is dedicating its 5th and final season to telling the story of the significant Chinese contribution made to building America's transcontinental railroad during the 1860s, and is doing so for the first time in television history.
公司個費用以往都一樣，你而家同房，公司攞個佣一個月比一個月高，我哋點樣還債啊，鄭生？我哋成班人都還唔到債。鄭老闆，你話啦，我哋點樣還債先？嚇？我哋等後再講。Boss man。
Mr. Bohannon, an honor to finally serve you in my humble rice shop. What can I get for you? Something to eat? Tea?
Just hamburgers right there.
In China, it's an offense to refuse a host offer of food or drink. But this is in China, thank God.
Gentlemen, welcome to Full Frame.
Great to be here.
Good to be here.
Well, Ty, let me start with you. I mean, you've had so many roles, and a lot of them fantastic. I mean, you've been great on screen.
Thank you.
You get this offer. This is special, though, isn't it? Why so, would you say?
Well, I think this is history in the making, because Hell on Wheels is a show about building of the railroad. And the Chinese had a significant contribution to building the railroad. And the fact that they built the most difficult part of the railroad, and this story has never been told, ever. Really, I think it is about time that the American audience and hopefully the worldwide audience get to see the contribution of the Chinese who basically had a hand in making America what it is today.
You know, what's interesting is I always talk, when I talk about CCTV America and I explain it, I always say it's a bridge between cultures in many ways. And it's a story, it's the American story for the Chinese story for the Americans in the West, and obviously a much bigger, we're a global network. But I think about that bridge from East to West and that story. I mean, clearly, without this railroad and the difficulty and the complexity of it, as you said, America isn't what it is. I mean, the American story wouldn't be that story, would it?
Absolutely. And I think even if you look at the global economy today, no one is isolated. Everyone is related. Everyone is interlocked, and there's a network of it. So whatever happens across the other side of the world will affect what's happening here and vice versa. So I think it's really important to really build understanding, to build, bridges that we all can get a better communication network among the world people. I think it's important.
Speaking of building bridges, this is remarkable. We have the two of you sitting on the sofa. You're not going for each other's throats because in the show, you're not the best of friends. Byron, you're just this fantastic guy, but you're kind of like the villain in this show. Not a nice guy. What attracted you to this role, would you say?
Well, the role of Chang it was written really with a lot of dimensions. He's a character who's from China, from the Civil War, the Taiping Rebellion, and he comes over to America to reinvent himself. And, I mean, this is a guy who speaks, Chinese, English, he reads Shakespeare, all these things. And it's a very multi-dimensional character that when I read the script, I said, wow, I've never seen this character before.
So tell us about your character, Tao. What did you like about that character?
Tao, I tell you, Tao is as complex a character as Chang is. And I think his journey is fascinating. I think he began as a simple man, became very complex because of special circumstances he's thrust upon on him because of the fact that he was bilingual. So he had an opportunity to kind of grow. And I think he kind of went full circle and got to be very simple again, so that his principle is driven by a singular focus as opposed to all of these different things that thrusts him into a situation where it may be difficult for him.
Let's watch a clip with you kind of at the center of it. Let's talk a little bit about it. So let's watch a clip. This is Tao in action.
He steals my money, I'll make more. If he beats me, I stand up. If he beats me again, I stand up again.
Them white man wants to try to hang Chang? The coach never made to Cisco. He's capable.
He could not win in China. He will not win here. I'm not afraid of Chang.
Yeah, maybe you ought to be.
What I love about that scene, and you don't see this enough, I think, in television shows, is they really gave you the freedom to do a lot with your face without words and convey so much. I mean, there's so much there. It's rich.
Well, the beauty of that particular clip is that he's gotten back to the simple part. Because I think he came to America fearing Chang. Because he knows who this guy is, how powerful this guy is, and how dangerous this guy is. And I think after he got beaten up in the show, I think he grew. I think he understands that in order to get to where he needs to go, he needs to bring everything back to the original form, which is simplicity. And I think that's what happened in this scene.
Well, I've played a clip of you. Now let's go to you. I want to show you Byron in action. It kind of shows you the different characters that we're talking about here.
You reconsidered my offer.
No. Come to see you distribute the Chinese payroll square.
Payroll distribution has continued without incident.
You're skimming wages. That stops now.
This is very unusual. a white man coming into my establishment to lecture me on how I conduct my business.
Railroad's my business, Mr. Chang, and all the workers own it.
Well, the Chinese workers are contracted through my company, Mr. Bohannon, for a negotiated price. How we then compensate those workers is Chinese business.
It's Chinese business. So is he looking after him? Is he trying to just skim the money? Is he hurting him, helping him?
Well, look, the character of Chang, I mean, here's what happened. You know, the Irish workers were making $3 a day. The Chinese workers were making $1 a day. And off that $1, I would take 50%. Now, why? Now, is that a bad guy? Well, okay, Chang has to provide for the restaurants, the opium houses, the whorehouses, to make, you know, to keep the workers happy. So he needs that money to finance all these things. So that's, you know, he's a businessman, right? These things don't grow on trees, right? So he's not a bad guy, in my opinion. He's just a businessman.
Were you surprised that they would dedicate a whole season to this? As you said, it's the untold story, a really important story about American history. And I think in many respects, if you were to pick up a history book, it might be a chapter or a page, and then you're on with it, and yet a vital story. Were you surprised?
Well, what was interesting that I found out from the producers was that, you know, out of all the 15,000 Chinese workers that worked on the railroad, and there were two lines, Central Pacific Railroad from the west to the east, San Francisco out toward the east. There was Union Pacific from the east to the west, and it was a race for time because every track, every mile they covered, 20 miles either way, the railroad owners would own that land and all the land rights to that land. So as you can imagine, it was a race. So the producers told me that of all the 15,000 Chinese workers that worked on the railroad, there were only a written record of 3 people. So that's why, you know, these stories were not documented, how they survived, you know, what happened. It was all verbal. I have friends whose grandparents, great-grandparents worked on the railroad, and they would tell me stories and tell the producers stories of what happened. But all these were, you know, transferred down verbally, not written.
And it could be lost without somebody stepping up and tying it all together and stitching it together in this way.
Exactly. So I found it very, you know, interesting. You know, my great-grandfather is from this province called Guangzhou, and within the province, Taishan. You know, I'm from Taishan. I believe Tai is also Taishan, from Taishan. So it's very serendipitous that both of us are working, you know, on the story, portraying these characters from the village of Taishan.
And so in many respects, this role probably far more important than any other in that you carry that burden of trying to tell this story of your ancestors in a way.
Yes, I think it was a surprise that they devote the entire season to tell our story. That never happens. I mean, most of the time when you tell this kind of story in the context of the Wild West, we're background color, okay, we're just atmosphere. So now you're talking about both of us are center stage. We're the focal point of the entire season. It's unheard of. So really, we're grateful that the fact that we get the opportunity not only for the world to share the story, but for us as people from Toisan get to tell our forefathers' story, and it is that important. It is beyond important. I mean, the weight in a lot of respects is overwhelming. But I think Byron and I both accept that responsibility because we feel that we represent our community well.
You know, preparing for this, one of the things that popped into my head was the movie Hollywood Shuffle. I don't know if you guys saw that years ago, but there's that famous scene where this guy's a Shakespearean actor and he goes in and delivers these lines, and then the other guy comes in and is doing this whole thing, and the first one's like, you're not really black, you're black, and it's these 3 white people making these decisions. And I think, you know, as a Chinese American trying to get roles, I mean, how hard is it to get something meaty and important like this, and how much of a struggle is that?
You know, really, as actors, there's not that much control you can have over these things, you know, right? I mean, you just kind of be open and things would happen. But I would say that what's really interesting, and you may agree, in the last 5 years, with the emergence of the China market, in the film business, that a lot of film projects and television projects, they're mindful of casting Chinese actors so that their projects, especially big studio movies, can translate, can be shown in the mainland Chinese market. That I found very interesting.
And Ty, you've probably been around the block maybe once or twice more than this guy. So you've watched this whole trajectory. How has it changed in your career?
I think, as Byron says, in the last 5 years, and as I said before, whatever happens in the East affects the West. What happens from the West affects the East. And I think there is truth to that. I think, there is a marked improvement in terms of, and I think there are several reasons for that. The accuracy of telling these stories and making these characters multidimensional and full-flesh out of characters that you see. And that's from one, technology. I think research is easier, that you have access to all of these wonderful information that can give you the confidence to write a good character. And secondly is that I don't think you can get away with it these days, that you write something that doesn't ring true. So I think you'll kind of have your back against the wall, that you really need to tell the story the proper way or don't tell it at all.
You're both artists. You obviously care deeply about your craft, and that's, the performance. But also when you work on a project, especially this one this close to your heart, you want there to be a takeaway. You're on one side of the television screen, the viewer's on the other. So, and I want to ask both of you this question. What do you want somebody watching this series, the ultimate takeaway? A respect and admiration, perhaps a deeper knowledge of the sacrifices? I mean, what's, for you personally, what does it mean on the other side?
I think for me, actually, I didn't think too much about, carrying the burden of the Chinese race when I was doing this project. I was just thinking about carrying my weight, making sure I don't embarrass myself, because I had to do a lot of stuff in this show. I had to quote Shakespeare. I had to do, act like a guy from that period. I had to fight, all these things. So I think the takeaway for me is that, number one, they would understand the Chinese side of the story, all right? And number two, what a great drama. What a great story. That's it. If the audience can get both of these things, then I'm fairly happy.
Ty?
I think when you tell any story, you want the audience to be moved one way or the other. And I think we have accomplished that because as this character goes through the show as Tao, I mean, he dies in the show. He gets killed. And Twitter just lit up. I mean, fan reaction that night was unbelievable. That my phone just never stopped about vibrating from 6 o'clock on, because in the East Coast, the show was already on. So by 6:30, people were already sensing that something's wrong. Something's going to go awry. And some of the feeds were going, oh no, this can't happen. Oh, it's like, it's amazing. It's emphatic. So that somehow the show, what we did as actors, as contributors, as collaborators of this creative process, have hit a core. Audiences feel what we do.
Right.
And I think ultimately, as actors, that's what we want. We want you to feel. So hopefully, from this, we get something a little more out of life than what we see every day. So
my phone was vibrating too, actually, except it was all hate mail. I hate.
We had to carry that burden at least, right?
Right. They're all blaming me, right? As if I did it.
What I liked is your candor, your honesty about, I'm worrying about myself. I'm not the entire, because I remember seeing Dustin Hoffman in an interview, and he said, any actor who's honest, they'll tell you they get the script, and I'm not on page 12, I'm not on page, you go to page 62, oh, this looks good. They're more concerned about their part, but the overall, seeing it all come together, though, that's the other thing about acting in a film or in a TV show. You're shooting kind of out of order and all over the place, but to actually watch the thing on screen once it's done, that's got to be special too.
Oh yes, I remember the first day of filming for me. I had to, first of all, portray my character, speak and talk the way I am, and move the way I am, and I also had to play poker with Anson Mount and another actor, Jim, who plays Jim Strobridge. I've never played poker before in my life, so that was my first day. And I had to quote Shakespeare on the first day. So, I didn't know that, if you play poker, but you have to put down chips first, and then you pick a card, and then you lay down a card. There's like 3 things going on, right? So I was worried about my lines, obviously. So I would sometimes just, put down money first, and then take a card without putting back. And, the guy off screen was giving me hand signals as to, like, this is a card. This is, for you to put down the money, So, yeah, I was mainly just worried about myself.
Ty, I would agree that both of us learned something very valuable. We should play poker with him, because I
Yes,
have played
absolutely.
before, and he's a sucker. He's
I'm telling you, let's play right now. Come on, Byron. I hope you brought money.
Well, if I lose, bad things might happen to you.
Oh, no, I'm more.
Oh, wait a minute. We want to separate the two of you. Gone back into character.
Right.
Thank you both for stopping by. It's been a delight. Great fun. Thank
Pleasure.
you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
When we come back, we'll meet the founders of Panda Express, the largest fast food chain of American Chinese cuisine in the United States. Husband and wife, Andrew and Peggy Chung, are the definition of a power couple. They are among the names you'll find on the Forbes list of the world's billionaires. They're not just partners in life, but in business too. They launched Panda Express in 1983, and since then, it's become one of the world's most recognizable Chinese fast food restaurant chains. Andrew and Peggy immigrated to the U.S. from Taiwan and Hong Kong. The couple first met in college at Baker University in Kansas. From there, they moved on to the University of Missouri, where Andrew completed a master's degree in applied mathematics, and Peggy earned her doctorate degree in electrical engineering. Today, they're living the American dream as owners and operators of the nearly 2,000 restaurants. They employ more than 25,000 associates. Next, they plan to further expand their brand internationally. We'll talk about that. They're here to discuss the Panda Way, the key to their success and their philosophy of putting people before profit. I want to welcome both of you to Full Frame.
Thank you.
How tough is it keeping this guy in line? Is he a troublemaker?
Visionary.
He's a visionary, yes.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, I think it's so interesting. The two of you go to school, you get the master's, you get the doctorate. They don't seem like they apply to the restaurant business. Now, you started in the restaurant business '73. When you got your degree, did you think, well, I'm going to just do this and then move on to something else, or was it just this is where I'm headed?
This is where I'm headed.
Yeah, right from the start.
Oh, yes.
How do the two of you complement each other? And the reason I ask you this is because a lot of husband and wives, they go off in separate directions. They work, they come home, they kind of discuss their day. You go to work, you come home. I mean, it's 24/7. A lot of people might have difficulty with that. What is it that you bring to the table that he's different, where you complement one another, do you think?
I think first thing, Andrew want to grow and just charging off. And then I kind of follow and then pick up pieces and put them together and build a system and process.
So it's that puzzle, the puzzle pieces. So that's where you come in. So it's vision, putting the puzzle pieces together. So talk to me about this march. It starts with one restaurant, 1973. Here the two of you are sitting here so many years later, and it is just huge. And I mean, it's not just the United States. You're looking international. How do you get from there to here?
Well, like Peggy said, I am always the person that look forward. I am looking for opportunities to get better, and get bigger. Probably in that order. And so to do that, I mean, our work together is I like to think about opening stores and running the stores. And I don't even care about, what is the bank account looks like. So that part is what Peggy take care of, and so it's been a very good compliment.
Peggy, you kind of start out, though, and this is what I think is interesting about your company. You start out as a family company. You've got the kids, you're a stay-at-home mom, I'm going to do this, I'm going to do that. Point of sale, you start thinking he's the visionary. But I don't think you ever really lost that. I mean, when I see these stories about the Panda Way, you're big, but you still kind of have that family feel. You don't, it's not like the customers are dollars and cents signs. It's not like the employees are just, you know, cattle and they can be moved away. I mean, there's this feel that's different than a lot of corporations. And I want you to talk to me about that, the Panda Way. How did this philosophy kind of come about?
I think we started as a family, and we like to maintain as a family atmosphere. So the first thing we really focus on is culture. So the culture, the Panda Way is actually more behavior norm throughout the organization than how we're going to conduct ourselves. So it's actually, we like to, with that kind of thinking, do everybody able to elevate themselves based on the culture, and then they feel they really able to live into this culture, and this culture really is part of them.
Well, it's interesting because so many corporations now, when you talk to them about growth, it's growth in stores, it's growth in numbers, it's growth in what's going in the wallet. People don't talk about the personal growth of their employees, but that's a big part of what you're all about, isn't it?
I think it's when the individual is doing well, and then they have the capacity to care for their own family and care for other people. And so they perform at a higher level, and that has really worked out very well.
I actually want to say that we want to be more balanced. And really, so we have that growth pyramid. Underneath the first foundation pyramid is culture, and afterward be people, guests, financial. So we don't really let one part overpower other part, but it's knowing what we can build on top of each other.
Yeah, thoughtful and planned, though, too. I mean, you plan your expansion. You're moving outside the United States. Where are some of the other places you've gone? I hear perhaps you may be headed towards China. I mean, what's that look like?
Well, I think everything is a possibility. I think we found out developing Panda Express internationally is not as straightforward as just opening a store here. And so it really takes a lot of planning and also quite a bit of change. Our brand is strong in the United States, and however, when you get out of the United States, not so many people understands or knows about you. So it's not automatic. And through the learning, it goes back to how we begin, is still understanding and do your homework and understand your guest, and do it well and do it diligently, and hopefully people will catch on quickly.
Is there, as you mentioned, homework, is a customer the same everywhere in the sense of what they want? What's the customer experience like? I mean, if you're going to sit there at one of your tables and just kind of do one of these and watch, whether it be here or anywhere else, what do you want the customer to get when they come into the Panda Express? And what kind of experience do you want them to have?
I think some of the things are the same. It's always good to have friendly people, guest service, clean restaurant, clean restrooms, good product, for example, good ingredients. And what is different is local habits. For example, in India, which we are about to launch and 50% of the people are vegetarians. And so how do you deal with a totally different way of eating? And so these are the kind of things that we have to work on it.
I don't know how you find time for it, but there is Panda Cares and the Panda Charitable Foundation. So it's not just focused solely on work. Philanthropy also a big part of things for you. Talk to us about that, and what did you get into? Where do you see those going?
I think those are part of culture. And then we do have Panda value, the 5 value, and then one of the value is giving. So the reason that is important to us is because we enjoy the opportunity we have given by us. So it's time to pay forward also. And so the Panda Care mission is really aiming to serve underserved children in education and health. And it's part of, also another one is part of really able to show that we have become part of the community that we serve. Another one is really try to inspire our associates that they're really able to enjoy the spirit of giving and to better their own life.
It's a big piece of it, isn't it?
Yes.
Thank you both for coming by, and I know how tough it is to carve out time to talk to us, because you're too busy working, aren't you? I mean, it's 100 miles an hour with the two of you, but thank you both. Really appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thank you.
The popularity of Panda Express proves that Americans love Chinese food takeout. Anyone who has strolled down the sunny streets of Los Angeles lately will tell you Asian food of all varieties has become the mark of cool in a city known as the epicenter of trend setting. And as full-frame contributor Sandra Hughes found out, the rising popularity of Asian foods is having a cultural impact on a new generation of Asian Americans.
On a hot summer night in the San Gabriel Valley, about 16 kilometers east of Los Angeles, a music video production is underway. David and Andrew Fung changed the lyrics of popular American songs to reflect Asian American culture.
So what, we hang out, so what, we drink tea.
Their first music video, called 626, was a take on the area code of San Gabriel, where more than 60% of the residents are of some kind of Asian descent. It's tongue-in-cheek, but with a bite.
The food's authentic, price is perfect, where restaurants focus on the taste, not service. You better.
And that's just how the Fung brothers like it. Born and raised in Seattle, Washington, they moved to Southern California to launch a career in entertainment that so far has involved music videos,
to Taiwan, Beijing to Hong Kong, something to bite on,
a YouTube channel,
all right, Danny, what's the Cantonese name of that dish?
and a 13-episode TV show called What the Fung,
what the fun?
where they traveled the U.S. finding restaurants where a great meal costs less than $50.
What's going on, everybody? David here, Andrew here, and we're the Fung Brothers. Over the years, we've mastered the art of eating the most authentic and delicious food without breaking our wallets.
Most everything they do involves food, so we sat down to a Chinese lunch to talk about why.
So these are lamb skewers. In Chinese, they call them yang rou chuar.
Oh, this is really good.
Asian food, in general, is very well respected in America, I think. At this point, we can say, like, a lot of Americans would say that they like Asian food. Kind of people want to blog about it, talk about it. They want to be the first one, like, oh, I tried this thing.
It is as surface level as food might seem. It's absolutely a legitimate peer into someone else's world.
Their parents immigrated to the United States from China and brought their love of food along with them.
They're cooking all different types of food
Well,
from Hong Kong
they're
style.
eating food together, talking about the food that they're eating.
They're kind of like really just into food.
That's why the Fungs use food as their link to their Chinese heritage, a heritage they say wasn't always cool.
Because I remember growing up, it was not good to be Asian. Like unless you were Japanese. I think Japanese had a moment when we
Japanese
were
have always been cool.
But if you were anything else other than Japanese growing up, it was not considered cool. It wasn't considered economically profitable. There was no incentive to embrace your culture. And I'm just glad now that kids have that.
The Fung brothers say just about everything Asian is hot right now, and no wonder. The Asian population grew 4 times faster than the general population in the U.S. between 2000 and 2010. In 2011, it was estimated the Asian population was 14 million people. And by 2050, more than 9% of the U.S. population will be made up of Asians. California is where the Fung brothers live and work, and it has the highest concentration of Asians of any state in the U.S.
I would say that what we do is we just try to offer a very authentic, balanced perspective of an Asian American who's born in America, thoroughly American from day one.
You know, we have this Asian Parents series where we talk about things Asian parents do.
Here's the list of weird things that our parents did. Hey, Mom, it's cold.
Yeah, can you turn the heat on?
No, don't waste money. Just wear more jackets. Did you eat yet? Huh? Did you eat yet? Huh? Did you eat yet? Did you eat lunch yet?
They come by their food obsession, honestly.
As much as you guys like to eat and talk about food, do you like to cook as well? Or did I hit on a sore spot?
We like, hold on, no. We
There's
like,
a lot of throat clearing on that one.
we like to cook. I can't say we're great at it.
Cooking has been left to Mom, who's the brunt of many of their jokes.
Mom, do we have any ketchup?
No, we have these. Taco Bell, McDonald's, In-N-Out. Here.
Why don't we just have a bottle?
While the Fung's parents were at first skeptical when Andrew said he wasn't going to medical school,
626 living, Boboland, 49 December
and David decided not to pursue business,
Cook the pearl perfect, had to put it in the song.
their parents love that the young men are trying to keep Chinese culture alive.
Chicken fries, make it tasty. Can you please make it tasty? Got me cheesing like the...
Is there sort of a sense of pride that you guys have done that?
Absolutely, absolutely. I think our parents are proud.
The Fung say they feel they represent not just Asian Americans, but a whole generation of immigrants' children.
I feel like we're just one of the young voices of New America.
A new America with different faces, culture, and cuisine. For Full Frame, this is Sandra Hughes in San Gabriel, California.
Coming up next, we'll be right back with this week's Full Frame Close-Up. Commonly, but incorrectly referred to as breakdancing, b-boying or breaking is a style of street dance that originated in New York City in the 1970s. This art form has crossed generations and cultures to become one of the most popular forms of dance among urban youth. We met with Jeffrey Chang, also known as Toys R Us, in Washington, D.C., where he shared his personal story about falling in love with breaking. He now travels the world, winning battles against other b-boys, earning him a reputation as one of the top breakers around. Along with his crew, Lions of Zion, he infuses old-school breaking techniques with a new and unique style.
I think breaking is so captivating because I may not speak the same language as the people in Uganda or the Philippines, but I can understand if you're a good dancer or not, and they can do the same thing. And then we all listen to the same music. If a James Brown song makes me move a certain way, and then someone halfway across the world feels the same as I do when they hear the song, then immediately we connect. And it's not like Asians are good at this and black people are good at this. It's like, no, it all just boils down to whether or not you practice and you train for it. So it's just all about skill. It has nothing to do with anything else. It's just the love for the art and the culture, and that's it. Within the culture of hip-hop or dancing, no one actually uses that term, breakdancing. It's not entirely wrong. It's actually pretty descriptive. I mean, it's a dance based on the break of a song. But the correct terminology is breaking. The term B-boy originally stood for Bronx boy because this was a movement or dance, this like culture started from the Bronx. And then over time, they switched it over because it wasn't just people in the Bronx doing it, it was people everywhere. So eventually it went over to the B standing for break because everyone got down to the break of a song. And so we call it B-boys, B-girls, or we use it as like a whole verb. We call it B-boying or B-girling, or just breaking. But we actually don't condone the use of the word breakdancing. We actually now use it to kind of differentiate between people who actually research and do the dance for real and the people who just do it to show off. Basically just people who want to show off, we call them breakdancers. We're here at the LOZ 19th anniversary, and we're here in the Shaw Howard University area of DC. And it's going to be a one-on-one B-boy, B-girl competition going on for a combined cash prize of $8,000. My crew's name is called Lions of Zion, Lions with a Z. Lions are always represented as being guardians in many different cultures, and the word Zion can translate universally as a haven. So for us, our paradise or haven would be the concept of like originality and hip-hop culture. So it translates to being guardians of originality and hip-hop. Originality is extremely, extremely important because how else are you going to stand out from everyone else, you know? Not just with b-boying, but in hip-hop culture in general, we have so many influences and inspirations from a lot of different cultures, you know? Breaking gets a lot of influence from a multitude of different Latin dances, martial arts, gymnastics, pretty much dancing from anywhere in the world. Like we just kind of borrow bits and pieces and then we kind of incorporate it into our dance. My crew are known as being innovators and pioneers. Not necessarily me, but the older original crew members that started dancing in like the early 90s. They really were one of the first crews to ever think outside the box. And so slowly over time, people started adopting that style and movement and some of their moves. For some of the newer members, such as myself and the younger members, we try to utilize the old school foundation and techniques, and we infuse it with our own like new school twist. And so that way we kind of represent the tradition and we maintain the context of the original b-boy culture while also evolving and elevating it and, you know, adding our own flavor to it. I've won a lot of battles and received a lot of awards all over the world, but really, this is like me and my crew's personal philosophy is, we're nobodies and nothing really matters. Like, we all feel extremely lucky, and if you ask me personally about me and my lifestyle and career, it's as a dancer, I just literally feel that way. It's complete luck. I mean, I've hustled really hard and I've worked my way to this career and learned a lot and networked with a lot of people. But at the end of the day, it's just, there's so many good dancers out there that not everyone is going to be noticed. I think another big misconception about breaking is that people who don't understand it think that we're just doing whatever. I mean, that's completely understandable because sometimes we do some crazy stuff and it does seem very sporadic. But I can guarantee you there's a lot of thought, physical training, mental development all behind it, and there's a lot of finesse involved. I hate it when people just think it's like whatever.
That's it for this week. Join the conversation with us on social media. We are CCTV America on Twitter, Facebook, and YouTube. And now you can watch Full Frame on our new mobile app, available worldwide on any smartphone for free. Search CCTV America on your app store to download today. All of tonight's interviews can still be found online at cctv-america.com. And let us know what you'd like us to take Full Frame next. Simply email us at fullframe@cctv-america.com. Until then, I'm Mike Walder in Los Angeles. We'll see you next time.